This is Blessed Radio. It's Tuesday night and it's the spiritual discussion program. I'm Sard, and very shortly I will have Gregory on the show. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Bro Sard. And the topic for discussion tonight, we have a topic for discussion every week. The topic for tonight is human desires and needs. So please do join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in the studio in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. If you're outside of UK, it is 004479. I'll say that again. Just try to get Gregory on the line. Can't seem to find him at the moment, listeners. Hopefully I'll get him very soon. So as I mentioned, the topic for tonight is human desires and needs. And you can join us in the discussion on this number, the UK number, which is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp, and if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. As always, I'm going to intro. Okay, we have Brother Gregory coming. Hello, Gregory. Are you there?
Hello.
Oh, welcome.
Yes.
Welcome to the show. I've just started. I'm in London, as always, in the studio, and the weather here, it's quite bright, and there are clouds in the sky. It's pretty nice, bright sunshine, and sort of bluish skies. How is it where you are, Brother Gregory? Where are you today?
I'm in Lund in Sweden, and it's been bright, but now it's getting cloudy.
Okay, just like here. Very good. Welcome to the show. I'm just going to read out the text. What is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth is by Bro Sard, is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life, for through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover, through the intuitive perception, if what is stated is the truth. Combining with the matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Bro Sard. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to finish with one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's a spiritual discussion program on Tuesday night. The aim of the show, as I mentioned already, is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message. And the topic for discussion tonight is human desires and needs. We'd love you to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in the studio in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. If you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. Gregory, before I start some questions, I wanted to just share with people some research I did for this topic tonight. It's such an incredibly wide-ranging topic, and I'm really hoping listeners will join us tonight with their questions. And I mean, it's the most, you can say, common thing that people can think about, their desires, their needs. And in my research, this is what I found. This is somebody called Stephen, some research done by Stephen Rice, and he's basically put a sort of in his research discovered that looked at 16 basic desires that motivate our behavior and define our personality. So I just wanted to go through them just to give us something to talk about. So power, the desire to influence others. I know there are 16, so it's going to be a bit of a long list, but I'll go through it. So independence, the desire for self-reliance. Curiosity, the desire for knowledge. Acceptance, the desire for inclusion. Order, the desire for organization. Saving, the desire to collect things. Honor is the desire to be loyal to one's parents and heritage. I don't think it's limited to just those things, but I guess that's part of it. Social contact is the desire for companionship. Family, the desire to raise one's own children. Status, the desire for social standing. Romance, the desire for sex and beauty. Again, I'm not too sure it's purely that, but that's what this person has defined it as. Vengeance, the desire to get even. Eating, the desire to consume food. Physical activity, the desire for exercise of muscles. And lastly, tranquility, the desire for emotional calm. And I'm sure we all know there's more than just these desires, but this is the basic desires that this person thought were the important ones, the significant ones. So, and I notice, of course, these are earthly desires, and our show is all about spiritual life, and of course we are on the earth, so it's like we have to consider spiritual aspects of life and take account that we are also on the earth with these things that we're looking at. So Gregory, I want to ask you, these desires, we will go into them more, I think, but first to ask about you could say the origin of these desires. Would you say they are something that is developed or is it built in? So is it something that we learn from parents or people around us, or is something that's sort of built in us?
The question first has to be examined whether those things listed are reducible to something more basic. The key thing here is that one has to differentiate that which is needed by the physical body, which physical body is used as an instrument to experience here on earth, and also consider the inner part of man. That inner part is referred to as the spirit. And with the clothing the spirit packs on itself, we refer to it as the soul. So these two things, the spirit and the physical body, whatever their needs are, should be of primary importance. Others become excesses and a complete waste of time and energy. When one talks of the desire to influence others, how can one influence others when one hasn't got the basic knowledge of what life is all about? That will be self-deception. So whoever did such research needs to go back to the drawing board. That person hasn't got the fundamental that makes life on earth tick. One may stress that all that has been discussed in that particular desires are the needs of the physical body, the needs of the intellect. All that man needs to aspire to is to ensure that it fulfills the needs that enable the physical body, which is the instrument it uses to experience here on earth, to ensure that that physical body is kept healthy, and also to ensure that the impression that are generated from without, that means impressions which come from out of the intellect, are transmitted back through the back brain to the spirit. So there are two basic needs: the needs of the spirit and the needs of the physical body. These two needs are not reducible because the inner core of man is of spirit. And because man uses the physical body to experience, the needs of the physical body have to be fulfilled. All others, like you said, are just mere desires. Whether it's able to accomplish those things is a different issue. But for man to want to influence others, when it hasn't got the basic knowledge about life itself, that will be self-deception. Because you cannot grant to some other person what you haven't got. So you'll be deceiving yourself to say, okay, this will be the needs, these are the desires, when you do not have the knowledge of creation itself or the knowledge of nature itself. because man has arisen through nature, therefore cannot sweep nature aside and says, okay, these are my discoveries. Even the word discoveries means something was already there. One has only become aware of it. So it becomes a discovery. For now, one will stop there.
Thank you, Gregory, for that. From what you have said, I can see that, let's say, this researcher has focused on the external, earthly, human desires, and as you said, it's not, and that on its own is not, well, it's incomplete to anyway, and it doesn't go to the real core of what life is about. It's only earthly desires or needs it is looking at, and obviously, he already admitted that this was just the basic desires, but even that is not really what you are saying is not the fundamental thing, what life is about. So thank you for sort of clearly identifying that. And then you also mentioned about that there are inner desires, the inner person, the inner man, or inner human being. And of course, I understand this researcher would not have considered that because he was only looking at the earthly things. So thank you for sort of pointing that out and sort of expanding this field that maybe people would not have thought about if we had not said that. Now, next thing I would like to look at is there's one thing, I mean, it's not mentioned in these desires, but it called it social contact, or I don't think there's anything, I'm just trying to look at it now, or acceptance, desire for inclusion. So if I were to use a spiritual term for, let's say, love, there's a need for love. The human beings have a need for love, or desire for love. Would you say that is a spiritual need?
Love really is not a spiritual need. Because the concept which has been painted intellectually turns out to be attraction, which attraction is only to fulfill some physical, what one may refer to as desires. That is not what love means in a spiritual sense. For love itself is basic. The basis of everything is love. Not the sort of love which tries to grab that and holds everything for itself, or as many will interpret it, so-called sex. That is far away from it. For love unites, brings things together. It is the basis for every happening. But love does not stand on its own. Love stands within the will of the Creator that has brought everything into existence. Therefore, one has to be careful when using the word love, because it is so basic and cannot be separated from any other thing. It is selfless, whereas the human love, the way it is perceived, is selfish. So you could see that one cannot interpret the love which is being discussed as that binding feeling. Many a time, feeling is what is discussed, which is mere imagination. This feeling which has arisen from the physical body. But love itself transcends the physical body. For when the physical body came into being, as at the time of birth or as at the time of pregnancy, and it doesn't last forever. And as at the time of death or transition, the physical body is no more. So one cannot tie love to the physical body. That love transcends the physical body, and therefore is more of a quality. It's more of a quality of the soul or of the spirit, which unites everything, because it forms the basis for basically all happenings.
Thank you for that. Now, I want to explore that a bit more, and following on the first question as well, and I'm talking about love here. So we've been talking about spiritual, I don't want to say needs, but maybe I can't define it another way right now. So the spiritual life, let's say, and earthly life, and the needs and desires that come, from spiritual life and earthly life. And you've just told me about, or the audience as well, about love, which is certainly something you get the sense that it is something eternal, and that obviously means that it can't be earthly. However, I was thinking, let's say there's a love in a form of the spiritual, and then there's a love on the form of the earthly. And when the spiritual love is expressed in the earthly, like you say, when there's a child born, the mother loves the child. I mean, the mother never stops loving the child, even when it's adult and grown up. But that's so. Maybe what I want to say is, it transformed the spiritual love when it's expressed in the earthly life. It is transformed. So, and one thing you were mentioning is that the spiritual love or love is selfless, and on earth what we see is selfish. So I'm just wondering, does the love somehow transform or take another form, basically, being on the earth than when it is not on the earth? I mean, in the spiritual, let's say, does it manifest differently in the spiritual than it does on the earth? Just because on the earth we know things are material, and in the spiritual there is not such material. So it just, because of the material that we have, spiritual, let's say, consistency, and on the earth we have the material consistency, is it that love is manifesting because of the material that we are in? I might not be
like we said, love is eternal, and it does not change. It remains love because it forms the basis of many a happening, or of all happening. What has happened when one considers earthly love, you find a scenario where that real love has been distorted so badly and interpreted so badly that it becomes difficult to use the word love as it should be used. So it's the distortion. A mother that has a child shows concern, loves this child. It is more of a show of responsibility, having asked to be able to bear a child, and that being granted through the laws of creation. The mother or the parents now take it upon themselves as a responsibility which they have agreed to partake in caring for this child. That is very natural. That is part of love. If, however, the parents, in the process of their caring, do not allow the soul that has incarnated to move forward in order to experience for itself, then you have that love or that responsibility has been distorted. For in all naturalness, when a fruit is ripe, it falls away from the tree. It doesn't remain in the same tree because the tree loves it and therefore it should be there forever. Such a scenario will cause all sorts of problems. So we know that when the fruit is ripe, it falls away from the tree. And as we know, once the fetus is matured and the time for birth comes, the child comes out of the mom. It doesn't remain there forever. And therefore, you find that when the child is matured to a certain stage, it should be permitted to move forward in order to experience for itself. But therein lies the problem, because many parents will not want that to happen because they in quotes, love their child and want to hold back that which is natural, which means they should allow the child to go and experience for itself because it's an individual human spirit. So you have real love, which is selfless, and then an expression which has been distorted and called love, or the lack of it, which is now put forward, where parents have a strong attraction and do not want the child to go forward to experience. So these are two different things. One permits the child or the human spirit, which is a strange personality, to experience for itself so that it becomes matured, whereas the other one prevents the human spirit from experience for itself when the time is right.
Gregory, what you've just said is quite disturbing, because I know you said the love has become distorted on the earth, and from what you've said, the consequences of that is, you can see it could be quite, it is devastating, because that child, you're saying, supposed to be when it goes to be adult, it needs to be experiencing freely, and instead it's being tied by its parents, you could say, with their selfish love. So can I ask you, it doesn't have to, I know what you're saying, it doesn't have to apply only for that particular example. How could this happen, that this conception of love and the conception and even perception of love, how could it become so distorted? What happened to us?
Well, it's quite simple to understand why this distortion has taken place. Wherever you have a scenario where man's intuition is not taken into account, whatever the intellect then dreams up is a copy, or is, something near to what should be. And because the intellect cannot see beyond its own personal space or earthly distorted concepts of space and of time, it holds on to what is around the neighborhood without carefully examining what lies beyond it. Well, it's understandable, because the intellect is of the earth. It has not got the capability of seeing further. And when you have a situation where the vibrations of the spirit, which are expressed as intuitive perceptions, when those vibrations are unable to reach the earthly intellect, or even if they touch the back brain and are passed on to the frontal brain, if these vibrations are ignored, then decisions are left to the earthly intellect, which intellect is unable to observe precisely or carefully. And therefore, instead of allowing things to make progress in accordance with the laws of nature, it holds on to it. It's like someone is hungry, and instead of eating your fill, you think, okay, the food is there. You now want to eat for tomorrow, and you keep eating. And you want to eat for the following day. You keep doing it until you can eat no more, because it becomes satiated with so much food. In that case, that person is unable to move. Whereas, should man listen to one's intuition, one is able to make decisions, which decisions will affect not only the earthly intellect, but also the spiritual. And as long as that exchange between man's intuition and the intellect, as long as it's done in the natural way, then the problems or the challenges are minimized.
Thank you for that. And I know from our many discussions in our shows previously, we pointed out how important the intuition is. And so, listening to your intuition, for example. So I want to ask you, and also another perception I got was that the intuition is like higher than the intellect. Now, what I can't understand is, how is it that if the intuition is more powerful, how can the intellect sort of take the lead and then somehow disconnect with the intuition or overcome the intuition? How can the intellect do that when you think the intuition is the let's say the more powerful? I don't know how to describe that, but you get the feeling that the intuition is higher than the earthly, and so it should be able to override the earthly, but it seems to me the intellect has overridden the intuition. So how could that happen?
Two things one may refer to here. Whatever is not made use of, or whatever is not in use vigorously, before long quietens down. That is, if one doesn't listen to one's intuition again and again, and if it is not taken into account, then you have the scenario where the intellect, that means the earthly environment, information is picked from there, then you are becoming one-sided. Therefore, you have a scenario where things seem to be dried up because you are picking things from the same environment. There is no fresh air from a different environment. There is no different perspective coming into the equation. But the precise answer can be found in the Walk in the Light of Truth, which talks about the disproportionate development of the frontal brain as compared to the back brain. Therein lies the problem, which is referred to as the original problem or the original sin. What one will say here is, many a listener should pick up the effort and try to examine the Walk in the Light of Truth, where the answers will be precise and more will be given that can be discussed here.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrushim. And as Gregory has mentioned, we urge you to pick up a copy of the Grail Message and examine it. You can go to this website if you want to get more information or even to get a copy for yourself. It's called www.grail www.grailmessage.com. I'm going to spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic for discussion tonight is human desires and needs. You can join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. And you can call, text or use WhatsApp. If you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. Gregory, I want to continue with what you were talking about just a moment ago, about the environment. Would you say our desires are expressed as a result of the environment?
The word desire is basically taken from out of the intellect. It is the intellect that desires. The spirit needs, and the spirit will only ask for its needs and not what it desires. Desires are what may refer to as my likes. So you will find the scenario where there's a desire to dominate others, which the spirit does not need at all. The desire to overeat. The spirit doesn't need to overeat because it doesn't take physical food. So the desires are tied to the physical body or to the intellect. And the needs of the physical body are different from the desires, which desires have sprung up from out of the intellect due to practice or due to cultivation over time. The desire to drink to excess, the desire to dominate others, the desire to be uncouth when speaking to others. So these things have sprung from out of the intellect, and you find that it is unhelpful because these are excesses which are not needed by the spirit. What we have stressed initially, only what will keep the physical body in prime condition, only those ones one may refer to as the needs. The spirit wills. This will comes as one's intuition, and in order to fulfill, one needs to gather the experiences, which may then drive the person on from one environment to another. And in the process of experiencing, the returns are passed on to the earthly intellect, which then passes on to the back brain to the spirit. But rest assured, the spirit will only will what it needs in order to mature. The desires, however, that have arisen from out of the intellect ask for something more than that. There is sometimes the desire to smoke, the desire to take drugs. All these things have been perverted due to man's wrong attitude. These desires have been cultivated, which are basically earthly, and to some extent, they have held on to it, and they are unable to sever themselves when the time comes for them to drop the physical body. So one has to be careful about earthly desires. Earthly needs are different. And as long as man does not listen to one's intuition, then these desires are likely to hold one back and makes it very difficult for the departing human soul to sever itself effectively and move forward in order to experience in other planes. So these earthly desires, the way they have presented themselves so far, has not been helpful. But earthly needs are different. They help to strengthen the physical body, and they also help to achieve what the spirit needs in order to mature.
I just want to clarify something about these earthly desires, which you say come from intellect. You were picking, like, let's say smoking or overeating or some such habits like this. Does it mean that anything that is an earthly desire or coming from the intellect is always harmful? Or is there something good as well from the earthly desires? Yeah.
Whatever comes from the intellect is supposed to be transient and should serve in order to enable the spirit to fulfill its task, the task of experiencing. So one made the distinction between earthly desires and earthly needs. So you have a situation or scenarios where you have desires which sometimes are classified as needs. These are two different things. One that springs from out of the spirit, and the intellect now takes it over and finds a way to implement that experience. Say the need to move from one place to the other. And in order to fulfill that need, you need to put on some shoes. So the intellect now goes about finding a way to design shoes or to procure a pair of shoes. That is healthy. The spirit, however, cannot want to overeat. Why? Because it doesn't need physical food. So that desire must have arisen from an earthly point, which, however, is more of a distortion of the body needs. So one should be very careful to distinguish that which the body needs. The body, one is talking about all that it needs in order to function optimally, and differentiate it from the excesses, which excesses many times are called desires.
Thank you for that. Now I want to look at another type of, you could say, desires or needs. We see, human beings do some things which, the rest of the creatures on the earth we don't see. For example, because so far what we discuss, eating, I've gone a bit blank on the other things that we talked about, and so on. But there's other types of things that human beings do, which are, let's say, other creatures don't do. For example, we can make music, play music, enjoy music, art, whether it's a painting or some building even, or also literature, because we're the only people who can write. There's no other creature can do that. So, we can enjoy reading literature and stuff like this. I would say that is also earthly, and but it doesn't have, you could say, any physical, you don't need them to survive. It's just something we seem to have a capability of it, would you say that is because in a way I'm asking how it came about, because we don't need it, and I don't know where the desire for it came, even if I can use the word desire, or the will for it, because we use the word will, spiritual will. How? Because you outwardly it doesn't. Yes, we enjoy music. Yes, we enjoy art, and we enjoy reading books. Reading stories, let's say. But how is there any need? How did it come about, such a thing, when you outwardly you don't think you need this on the earth, to survive or to continue to live? It doesn't. So how do you think that came about?
You mentioned, if you classify all you just discussed, they fall under the category of art. Art, most of the time, is an expression of expressions from one's intuition, expressions from one's spirit, which has been made earthly. So, on the one hand, you have expressions which the spirit wish to put across, and in order to make it earthly, you have things like music. You have to read something so as to pass certain impressions back to the spirit. So it is wrong to say we don't need it, because it came from the spirit and is passed on to the earthly, which has now taken on form. And many a person, in listening to it or in experiencing it, be it in the enjoyment of some fine arts or of music, these impressions are absorbed and sent back to the spirit. So they are needed. They help in the maturing of the spirit.
And when you hear good music or look at art, something beautiful, you feel upliftment. So is that also an aspect of spirituality, that it wants to uplift the world?
First, each person needs to uplift himself or herself. The idea is not to bother about uplifting the world, but to strive to uplift oneself. Once one is along that direction, because one has received in this upliftment, the natural law is that whoever has received has the duty to pass it on or to make available what it has received. So that is how these things go. One cannot differentiate and say, oh, I received, this is for me alone, or I'm going to give to the world. One should not even say it. Whatever one has received, just like whoever breathes in needs to breathe out. You don't have to go announcing it that, oh, I breathe in, I'm breathing out now, so I'm causing a balance. It should come automatically, because the laws of creation through which the human spirit came into existence are automatic.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to again, I always look at the news to try and sort of, discuss things that's going on in the world. And today I was watching some breakfast news, and they were showing some, I won't mention any name, but some, let's say, famous musician. He's quite young, and he's and also, very well off, wealthy. And he said he's going to take a break. He's, as I said, from doing the music now, because he's got to deal with some personal things in his life, but he will come back. And then the news TV presenter, let's say, he said, he wondered how can people suffer these sort of things who are, supposedly in a very good circumstances. And he said he has also been to visit in South Africa, in Soweto, where people are really suffering in terms of earthly things, and yet when you see them, they're smiling and happy, and they have very little earthly things. So, and yet one of the reasons I'm pointing this one out, because people, the public, let's say, are very fascinated by these famous people, stars, and not so concerned about, they do want to help poor people and so on, I don't want to say like that, but somehow they're attracted to these things. And yet, of course, you can't generalize that every famous person is suffering, through either mentally or unhappy in their life. But you think, oh, this person is well off, why should he be going through that? And then you hear people who are, like I say, in thousands, in Soweto, say, where there's not much there in terms of earthly things or resources, and yet you can see them smiling and happy. So my question is, how can this be?
Human spirits respond to things differently. And therefore, if one has to judge by facial appearance, then many errors will arise. The needs of human spirits are different. One should not say because one person is able to command so much money, therefore that person is better off compared to some other person who is not able to do the same. If in their striving they need to bridge or to experience certain scenarios, so be it. That scenario will enable them to mature and take the necessary lessons from that particular scenario, for that is what they need. But many times in our short-sightedness and wrong attitudes, many equate money to the necessary experience which the spirit needs. As is well known, once one becomes, in quote, wealthy, you find that the wealth then dominates that person and is unable to exert himself or herself in order to experience accordingly. For he or she will always rely on the money to solve the problem. But ask yourself, look at the scenarios that you keep mentioning. One is a famous footballer, but can he pass that skill to his son or his daughter? Impossible. The son or the daughter needs to go out there to experience. So the key thing here is experience. Only in experiencing can the spirit mature. And therefore, what you have found in most cases is a distortion by looking at the physical appearance of one and thinking, oh, I am better off because I have more money, or because I am a musician, or a footballer, or I have done this and that and that. The experiences that the spirit needs will be fashioned out by the administrators of creation to ensure the spirit goes through these experiences, and as long as these experiences, the value are passed back to the spirit, then it matures. If, on the other hand, you have the scenario where someone uses money, in quotes, to smoothen the track, then that person lacks the experience. And as long as you lack the experience, the spirit cannot mature. So there is the need for the human spirit to experience. Whether the human spirit is in Soweto, or is in China, or in Japan.
Thank you for that, Gregory. You really, I can say, pointed out, where our focus has to be and not be misled by the external, picture, So thank you for that, pointing that out. Now, what I was going to ask you now really is, when we started at the beginning, we said we need to understand what is actually the real life, what is true life, and then from rather than get misled or distracted by the external earthly life that we are so familiar with. So, and we've already mentioned it in every show that the real person is the spirit or personality. So my question now is, what is this spiritual life? What, this journey that we are on this earth now, what's the purpose of our spiritual life?
As is may be seen from the external, we know that a child comes into this world and is born and stays for some time. It matures, it grows, gets to old age, but it doesn't stay here permanently. So there is the birth and the death. And during that period, there is the need for the personality to experience. The personality that is referred to here is not basically the form which the body has taken in this particular case on earth, but the inner core, which inner core animates this form which we refer to as the physical body. It is that is that core that transcends the temporary abode or the temporary presence. That inner core animates the physical body. That inner core existed before the physical body. And when the physical body is dropped, it continues to exist. As to how that inner core took over the physical body, one will have to refer us back to the Walk in the Light of Truth, where the details of how the inner core, which is the personality, how it took over the physical body, as to how that personality will proceed after the demise of the physical body. It becomes very clear that due to one's decisions, one grants permission to those who are responsible for the weavings, those who are responsible for the administration of creation, to weave an abode through which each personality will have to pass through, an abode which is woven in accordance with its activity. An abode which is woven based on one's intuition, which is woven based on one's thoughts, and which is also based on one's actions, physical actions here on earth. These three weavings are connected, and this is what the personality will have to pass through in order to experience through them. So, in maturing, through experience it, the spirit gets to know that which is of value and that which is of less value and very transient. If the spirit holds on to that which is of value in accordance with the laws of creation through which the spirit came into existence, then it is drawn to that sphere from which it came as an unconscious spirit gem. So that inner personality left a particular sphere in creation in order to experience, based on its experiences, which experiences are of value, is able to mature so as to take back this maturity towards its origin, which is referred to as home or the paradise of man. There, not as an unconscious spirit gem, but as a self-conscious personality, that's such that it can now partake of the activities there, which activities are swift. Again, more of this can be found in the work In the Light of Truth. We can only paraphrase here very briefly, but should someone be bold enough to examine this work, then the richness is overwhelming. For the spirit we find in therein what it seeks to enable it to return back home as a self-conscious human spirit.
Thank you, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. This is the spiritual discussion program on Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. in UK time. And as Gregory mentioned there, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abrushin. And if you would like to get a copy of the Grail Message or want to go get some more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is human desires and needs. You can join us in the discussion. In UK, the number to contact us is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00 44 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. Gregory, I just want to continue from what you were discussing earlier about, the meaning of life. You can say, the purpose of our life, spiritual life. And I want to say, we came from, let's say, nature, or we're developed by nature, let's say, and the purpose is, as you said, we started as an unconscious spirit germ or spirit being, and the aim is to become a mature, conscious, self-conscious spirit being. And our journey started high up in the spiritual world, in paradise, and the aim is to return back there. In the meantime, we have to experience, and not in the meantime, we experience that the aim of life is to experience, and part of the experience we know we are here on earth to experience. So what my question is, how can we sort of, do we have to have a knowledge, like we've mentioned here, the Grail Message? Do we need to come across a knowledge? Or since nature, when we were sent on our way here, we were not, let's say, searching for knowledge, as far as I'm aware. You know, we are unconscious, we're just wandering around. You know, somehow we came onto this earth in our journey, and then now we're, let's say, becoming more conscious on the living on this earth or experiencing. Is there something that nature will bring us back to paradise by itself, or do we have to, through this experiencing, come to know a knowledge or find some way which will, you know, bring us back to paradise? So is there, yeah, that's my question.
There has always been guidance from or through the laws of nature or the laws of creation in general as to what is needed for the maturity, for the experiencing of the human spirit, to ensure that they develop in the right manner, which will enable them to bring forth or to cultivate those talents which have been implanted in them. As long as those talents are used in the right manner, then the necessary experiencing which the spirit needs for maturity is assured. So there has always been some gentle guidance. Such guidance has been such that from the beginning of time, when the human spirit became slightly aware, there have been stories of the fairies which were told, which passed on from parents to children. So these were very gentle guidance, and it was very well known that these children absorbed these stories, reflected on it in their own way. And as the human spirit matured in time, there were other, well, I say, teachers. So in the initial stage, we had what one may refer to as the nature beings as teachers, showing us what will be needed whenever we did ask, and in loyalty they fulfilled that role. And as we matured further, some other teachers were sent. Some teachers, one may refer to them like the likes of Moses, were sent to help in the maturity. These teachers were sent because many a time human spirits forgot about what they were supposed to do here on earth or in the world of matter, and felt distracted. So instead of severing themselves, experiencing what they should, they were distracted by themselves and those around them, and then didn't pay attention. And this gentle guidance continued. So you find that there has always been guidance, and there is still guidance. What we now have in the form of the walk in the light of truth is a complete unraveling of what the laws through which everything came into existence, what these laws are, and how they operate, such that man will seize, take hold of these laws, understand them in the context that they are presented, understand what they need, and adjust their weavings, adjust the way they do things, such that everything will harmonize in such a way that they will find the quickest way to mature and return back home as self-conscious human beings, not returning back home as unconscious spirit gem. Those, however, who refuse to make use of what had been granted, it will be a scenario where they do not know what they must do to get back home. If at all, the memories of home still ring deep within them. As long as the memories of home resonate deep within, then one feels attracted to go back home as a self-conscious human spirit, such a self-conscious human being, and we take the shortest cut without wasting time. And that is why we discuss what the spirit needs and what man needs in his physical body, not excesses. Like you rightly identified, it is the desires, these excesses, that hold man back, so it's unable to make progress. Whereas the work which we now have points everything out clearly to separate your desires from the needs which are necessary for man to mature and return back home. Therefore, it is urgent, not just because a book has been presented. The value of what has been written is not just in the sentences as such, but in the experiences that man should take upon himself or herself in order to mature. So there has always been guidance, and the guidance is there. Whoever makes use of them aright will find that it becomes very helpful in a manner such that is able to sever himself or herself from those ignoble thoughts and strive to go back home in the shortest possible time.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I want to talk a little bit about the human needs, which I've done a bit of research again. This time there's a famous self-development person called Anthony Robbins. He does those development courses, and he, let's say in his own research, in his own discovery into human behavior and development and motivation, he came up with these 6 human needs, and I'm just going to go through them. So one of them is certainty, the need for safety, security, comfort, order, consistency, control. It's a bit like when I've talked about the desires, this one sounds like power, but I think there's a spiritual aspect to these things, so I just want to present it here. So it says, at a basic level, each of us needs to satisfy a core sense of stability in the world. So that's one of them, certainty. I'm not going to go into much detail, but I just want to bring them up. The second one is variety, the need for uncertainty, diversity, challenge, change, surprise, adventure. Just as we need to experience a sense of certainty in the world, there are times we must also break from that which is known, defined and predictable in order to allow ourselves to evolve and become more who we came here to be. The need for uncertainty, diversity and movement interrupts the patterns of predictability and stagnation, allowing us to expand who we are and experience ourselves in motion. Of course, there's a risk in letting go of that which is certain and known, but when we let go of needing to know, we enter a realm of possibility that is not bound by past experience. All this I'm quoting from an article which is not by Anthony Robbins, but is based on Anthony Robbins' sort of discovery. So that is certainty and variety. And there are 6 human needs according to him. So I just want to explore that with you, Gregory. Now, this is different from the desires that we talked at the beginning of the show. So, would you say, is there any like spiritual, this again, it's based on earthly experiencing. We're talking about experiencing, and would you say there's some spiritual sort of background to this, where we need certainty in our lives, and then you could say an opposite of that, if that's the right way to express it, there's also we need variety in our lives, and it's just a part of our growth, you could say. So would you say that is like a way to experience life, is something that the spirit needs?
Life itself is based on motion. Motion is a basic law in creation. And therefore, whoever needs to mature needs to be on the move. In being on the move, that which it needs, it will experience along the way. It will experience certainty, knowing fully well that a grain of corn will produce a grain of corn. That which is lighter will rise, and that which is heavier will sink. These things will become certain within. It will also know that there is reciprocity in creation. So these things which are mentioned will become certain deep within the spirit, and therefore it will not expect arbitrariness within the works of creation. If there is any arbitrariness, it must have been introduced by man himself. So those things that it has observed, of course, behind them lies the laws of creation. All merely is doing is expressing these in his own limited way, or in his own transient way. What one may not refer to is uncertainty. Such uncertainty, as he's mentioning, does not exist in creation. You want surprise and things of that nature. Things become uncertain. Well, as long as one radiates in creation, then one also influences the results that comes back to one. But the basic laws of creation remain the same. What is being expressed there are the forms that man has introduced, are the concepts that man has introduced in order to understand these laws through which the human spirit, came into existence. Different people will express it differently.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Just we mentioned the uncertainty. He called it variety, and then he went to say what is variety: the need for uncertainty, diversity, challenge, change, surprise, adventure. So I think he probably chose, not realizing the wrong word there, uncertainty, because as almost like an opposite of the certainty. So I got the point you were making. So I think he didn't realize, he probably doesn't really mean that if he examines what he's actually saying, because when you read more what he's saying, uncertainty doesn't come there. It's more about adventure, and actually it's comparing something is certain, it can get boring, so you need a change, and the change of that would be not uncertainty but something challenge, like you use the word challenge, or surprise, or an adventure, something different. So I think he's not chosen the right word. Probably if he had reflected deeper what he said, he probably wouldn't have chosen that word, because he actually he started with the word variety. So but thank you, Gregory, for that. I want to continue with that, because there are 6, according to Anthony Robbins, there's 6 human needs. So the other one, they seem to be in pairs. So we've had certainty and variety. The next one is significance, the need for meaning, validation, feeling needed, honored, wanted, special. And just as we had the balance as we balance the forces of certainty and variety in our life and step out into the world, the next human need is to be seen and validated for who we are and what we do. The need for significance tells us that we do not exist in isolation, but as a part of the greater whole. And to be effective part of that whole, we need to know that we are playing our part, being honored for that expression. Satisfying our need for significance is part of creating our sense of identity in the world. For those who follow the chakra system, I don't think I'll go there. I'll leave that. Well, I will actually finish it. So I'll just... Satisfying our need for significance is a part of creating our sense of identity in the world, and for those who follow the chakra system, this need can be aligned with our solar plexus, the experience or expression of the self. So that is the need of significance, and then as a counterbalance, you could say it is love and connection. The need for connection, communication, intimacy, and shared love with others. We each have a need to love and be loved by others. We each have a need to belong. Central to our experience of fulfillment in life is to authentically love and make deep connections with other living beings, while fulfilling our need for significance. While fulfilling our need for significance may temporarily fill our own cup, exchanging genuine love and connection with others allows the cup to overflow and pour into the hearts and lives of those who we are with. The shift to this human need is much like a shift from the solar plexus into the heart, as it takes our energy and focus beyond the self-concern into the discovery of power in the depth of our communion with others. So, Gregory, again, based on what Anthony Robbins is saying there, not based, just exploring, what Anthony Robbins is saying there, the new human need for significance and need for love and connection. Again, is that something that we need spiritually? Is it like a part of our spiritual experience that we need to feel a sense of love through connection, and also he mentioned the point of playing our part, finding out that we are part of this world or creation, how we are talking about it, and playing our part in it. So that gives us some significance that yes, we have a role to play. Again, is that something, would you say, is some spiritual value there?
It would have been best if Anthony Robinson, I hope that's the correct name.
Anthony Robbins.
Anthony Robbins states the basis for such discussions, such that from those bases one may examine some of the postulates he has put forward. For the enumerations he had made, if put within the same category, will not form the proper basis, but will end up like a basket of unrelated parts, because there is no basis from which many of the points he has put forward can be knitted. However, one may take bits here and there and say that all he's trying to do is to form a basis from which many can take solace and move forward. Each one was not born in isolation. Each person came to this world through a woman or some other person. And therefore, one cannot talk about isolation. That is completely out of the question. Each person breathes in and breathes out. It means, therefore, whatever comes to you, you make use of it and send it out. This is so self-explanatory that there will be no need to bring in extra conditions. What is needed are the clarity of the laws through which every activity in creation can be understood. What has been put forward now by his research are only temporary bridges, which bridges will not hold in a rigorous discussion or in a rigorous analysis, but will suffice for an academic discourse. When he talks about the solar plexus, how does the solar plexus fit in within the scheme of things in creation or in nature? What will he refer to as nature? Is it what he sees on the outside? Most of these discussions are based on outer observation. The inner, what activates the outer observations, are not mentioned. Therefore, their conclusions fall short. Their conclusions and their observations are one-sided. Unless you have a scenario where all are considered and a basis is used to explain all, then one may refer to as such things in a very narrow way, because one may refer to them as being haphazard, uncoordinated, but trying to find a basis. What activates the solar plexus? What activates society? Before this earth was populated, there were other animals before man came in. Before man, there were not only animals, there were trees. Before the trees and vegetation, there were the elements. There were the seas. What activates all this? Where comes the order that maintains all this? Outside of the earth, there is the sun, there are the stars, the physical universe. What activates all this? Any consistent or any self-consistent postulate must ensure that all that exists must be accounted for, not the little one which have been observed in the so-called scientific arena. So much as good as his work is, it falls short to examine what lies behind this. So it is best if in all our activities we strive to understand what activates, what lies behind all that we see physically. Only then can we put our efforts together to form a coherent, consistent set of rules in order to move forward. And that is what we have now found in the work in the light of truth, which must be examined in all its depths, so as to come to a final conclusion, to know where one has come from and where one may go consciously, and to know the limits that lies within the scheme of things, beyond which the human being cannot go. So that is what is sought for, not the small things you find around in society, not the acceptance or not acceptance by society, for we live in a society, and it's only common sense that we should be accepted as long as we fulfill our task within that society. It is no rocket science.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I just want to include the other two human needs that Anthony Robbins has talked about, and just for sort of completeness. So the next one he's got is growth, the need for physical, emotional, intellectual and spiritual development. One thing that is true of every living thing on earth is that in order to survive, in order to thrive, we must grow. Whether we are talking about a microorganism, a relationship or creative endeavor, that which ceases to grow ultimately stagnates and dies. The human need of growth both relies on and needs the first four human needs, breathing life into all areas of our existence. As with all human needs, the need for growth can also be taken to out of balance extremes. Growing and expanding can be so fulfilling in its own right that sometimes our quest to fulfill this need causes us to limit ourselves from being fully present in life as it is, or postpone applying our growth and knowledge in the world for fear of not being ready for or enough. In the positive, fulfilling our need for growth comes with an acceptance that growth is a journey, not a destination. And the continual growth also means allowing ourselves to be real, to be the imperfect, and to find authentic ways to share what we discover and learn with others. So that is about growth. And then, as always, there's something paired with it, and this time it is a contribution. The need to give, care, protect beyond ourselves to serve others and the good of all. As we ascend to the sixth human need, we move into the power of living our life's purpose and bringing real value to the lives of others. Our need for contribution rises naturally from the positive fulfillment of the other 5 needs expressed in such a way that brings a genuine sense of value to the word. Contribution comes from a fundamental yearning to have our lives mean something, to make a difference, to give or bring something to the world that continues to benefit others when we are gone. Our need for contribution can be fulfilled in a massive variety of ways, from launching a foundation or volunteering to support a cause we believe in, or simply pausing our busy day to smile, hug or help someone in need. The challenge with this human need is that once we connect with the power of being in a genuine service in the world, we can quickly become overwhelmed with all of the places, people and animals that are in need of support. Many people who value the need for contribution above all others find it difficult also to contribute to give to themselves. One of the greatest expressions of this need comes when we allow ourselves to realize that contribution comes not only from what we do, but from who we are being on a moment-to-moment basis. When we are empowered to be our contribution in the simplest of ways, actions that arise from this place are aligned with who we are and carry great power. So, Gregory, I know you have said quite a lot about this, let's say, research or discovery, and so some of the things I'm sure you've already said it already, because as you say, real life we know is actually spiritual life, and many people who are coming up with whatever they've discovered, their focus is just still, let's say, earthly, or not a little bit beyond the earthly, and so they do not have that full picture which is really needed. So yeah, would you like to say anything further on what I've just said?
The only thing one may add is that such research or such discoveries will serve a better purpose if they are taken entirely within the scheme of things, or best appropriately put, within the laws of creation. It is well known that order is the first law. Creation is well ordered, and therefore man's experiences, such as his, must be put within this order to find if it is of value. So it is the order that tells whether something is of value or not. So whatever research anyone is engaged in, one must refer to the laws of nature or the laws of creation, which laws are now best expressed in the work in the light of truth.
Thank you for that. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the spiritual discussion program. And the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdul Sheen. And if you're interested to get a copy for yourself or get some more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that: www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is human desires and needs. You can join us in the discussion by contacting us on this number in UK, which is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 866. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, I want to talk about something that is in the Bible about Adam and Eve. First there was Adam, and then somehow he felt alone, and he asked God, to provide something, a company for him, and so Eve was created. And my question about that is, does everyone need to have a life partner? Hello, Gregory, are you there?
The question is, does everyone need to have a life partner?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Each human spirit has its own needs, which are different from others. If in the course of experiencing, one senses the need for a more rounded or complete picture, in the sense that many a thing that one needs to be actively involved with, and there are other things which, because he's involved with things actively, there are other things he doesn't or she doesn't get involved with, then in order to form a complete whole, there is the need to have that which is active and that which is passive or more sensitive, such that a particular task is fulfilled. What one is saying here, on the one hand, we have the role of a man being actively fulfilling certain tasks, and then the role of a woman actively fulfilling the final task in order to achieve the goal. Then, yes, it is. But that's each personality has to determine whether they wish to go that way or not. For in creation, there is no compulsion that you must do this. If deep within your sensing, one has come to realize, or one is now aware that this is what one may fulfill. These are the tasks one would like to get involved with. So be it. So it would be wrong to start giving rules. You must not stay alone. You must do this. You must do that. For the needs of human spirits, or the experiences that the human spirits have come to learn from, vary. But these are different human spirits. If the returns that they have placed in creation due to their past experiences are such that they will need someone to work with in order to fulfill certain tasks, then provision is made in creation to do that. So there will be no rules as to say, this is what you must do, this is what you must not do. For the human spirit has the free will to decide what to do. Like it is said, to be or not to be is not the question. For everyone wants to be. Everyone wants to be self-conscious. What the deciding factor is how to be, is how to become self-conscious. This, however, has been made so very possible in the walk in the light of truth.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Another thing from the Bible about Jesus saying, "How ask, and it shall be given unto you." Now, does this mean we can have anything we want? Surely it doesn't quite sound right in some case. For example, where people want to cause violence or use violence to get what they want. Let us assume we desire something good, which gives benefit. So there's the two type of question in this. Can we have what we want, anything we want rather? And if so, another sort of aspect to that is there a limit to how much we can have or need? Because for example, on the earth, there's only a certain amount of resources. So, so what does it mean when Jesus said, "Ask, and it shall be given unto you"?
It should be very clear, like many a person knows, or so-called many a Christian knows, that Christ's mission was basically spiritual. And therefore, his expressions, like ask, and it will be given unto you, refers to spiritual movement. The asking is spiritual movement. And in seeking diligently for a spirit that is austere, the reciprocal action is such that that is seeking diligently, it will find. Of course, it doesn't refer to societal needs. For go and ask from outside. They won't give you anything. Knock on their doors, they will shut it tight, even from the government who is supposed to assist. On the contrary, they will take away from you. So one cannot apply the words which Christ has mentioned, has given, to the everyday discussions of politicians. For if you ask them, they will not give you. For in all simplicity, you should not expect someone to give you what they don't have. Therefore, the words of Christ cannot be applied to these scenarios, for many lack most of the things they keep mentioning. Therefore, it should be realized that his words were meant spiritually, that whoever asks diligently, with the diligence of the Spirit, with the diligence of one's intuition, such activities will automatically attract that which the human spirit needs. And that which the human spirit needs is that which will ennoble it, not that which will destroy it. As you will find that intellectually, many things that are desired in such a way that were they to be fulfilled, it will smoother or kill that particular person. So his words are more sublime than the narrowness which many have not tied to it. For when it is said ask, which is the diligence of the Spirit, you will only ask from creation, not from fellow human beings of human spirit who do not have it. Because the wisdom of the Creator has placed these things there. And whoever seeks diligently in reciprocity will find what it seeks for, which maturity will enable it to return home to its spiritual home, where it is permitted to exist forever. For what the human spirit is seeking is the permission to exist forever. Whereas in the other case, it is meaningless. And only creation can grant you that opportunity. And within creation, there are the administrators that have been put in there, which administrators ensure that as long as the human spirit is asking diligently with the spirit, then that it needs in the wisdom of the Almighty, that those needs will be met. And those needs will enable this human spirit to return home and exist consciously or self-consciously, eternally.
Thank you for that, Gregory. From what you said, it reminds me about another words of Jesus: "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything else will be added unto you." So that must come first, and then, because also in the Lord's Prayer it is said, "Give us our daily bread." And unfortunately, I've just slipped my mind what is the rest of the prayer. But there's something. Yes, we need something materially, but yet first we must seek spiritually, and then the material things will come. So if I can say, that's basically the message is that. So thank you for that. Now I've got a different question. Again, it's things which are happening in the news here, we hear about. So basically it's about the need to talk about things, when people are suffering, especially the victims, so for example, let's say when children have been abused either by parents or some adults, and they're told to keep quiet, otherwise more suffering, they will suffer more. And when they grow up to become adults, they're still affected by, whatever it is, sexual abuse, whatever type of abuse it is, violence. They're so affected when they grow up. Still sort of memories can't forget what happened, and affecting their confidence, whatever. And then they feel a bit of dilemma, maybe even when they're young, whether to speak out or keep quiet, because if they speak out, they'll be cut off from the people they love, even though those people are abusing them. And so, and this, you could say, children are vulnerable, young people are vulnerable, so there is a big dilemma whether to speak out or keep quiet. So what should they do, basically? What do you think should happen in this situation? And let's go into that when they're children first. Let's talk about that. What can they do as children when they have this abuse happening, especially from people around, in their family or something like that? Should they speak out? That's my question, really.
Hello, did you say children?
Well, yes, children who have been abused during their young, and then what it is, then there's a later thing when they keep quiet, and then they grow up to be adults, and they're still suffering, the horror of what happened to them as adulthood. And then normally they don't say anything when they're young. When they grow up, they speak out, because while they're young, they feel they're in a dilemma that if they say something, it will damage some relationship with the people they love, even though the people are abusing them. So should they speak out when they're young? That's one aspect of it. And because you could say it's part of a healing process. If when they grow older, they still have the effect of what has happened on them, and then they feel they have to speak out to do something. So my first part of the question is really, should they speak out when their children being abused? That's my first part. And let me ask that one.
The question is always, should they speak out or not speak out?
Yes.
And whom should they speak to when you say should they speak out?
Yes, of course, yes. That's speak out to, obviously, I would say outside of the with the people who are giving them, abusing them. So it might be the police. It could be the police.
You see, this is why one has to be very careful. Here we have a situation. They are supposed to be protected, all right, by those whom they have trusted. Now, those whom they have trusted did not protect them. And now they're going to speak to those whom they do not yet know, who, on the other hand, will even capitalize on their vulnerability for some other purpose. Should they speak out? If you take the case of a reverend father who has abused a child, and the child, feeling so bad, reports to the bishop, what then happened? The same thing happens in a war scenario. Look at Syria. Look at Afghanistan. What you find is that the human spirit have become so base. Whom will you speak out to in Afghanistan? Whom will you speak out to in Syria? During the time of Saddam Hussein, whom will you speak up to? Saddam Hussein himself? It's a very sad story. What is needed is a proper understanding of the forces of nature. What one is trying to paint here is that every one of our activities are very well recorded by the administrators of nature. Our thoughts, our physical activities, and our intuition. If every human spirit or every elder knows of this, that they are building for themselves things which will come back to haunt them wherever they are, here or hereafter, then no one will want to sow or make a bed of thorns for himself or herself. So the abuse of children automatically will vanish. For children, what should they do? If, on the other hand, at a tender age, they have become acquainted with the fairy tales and the laws which govern things, they will adjust very quickly. As you find in many cases, they make a report to one authority, which authority will capitalize on it and use it for their own advantage. So where should they go? If they cannot trust their parents or trust their so-called priest or imam, these ones who claim to be nearer to the Almighty, these ones who cannot even appoint a place for themselves, what do you then expect the children to do other than to suffer and endure? So the first rule is to educate the so-called elders so that they are aware of their responsibilities and what they themselves are doing. There is no getting around it until there is complete awareness that what a spirit has sown, it will reap it in abundance. Whether in the abuse of children or in any other activities, be it good or evil, that they themselves have placed it there, whether they are the heads of religions or not, that the laws of creation through which they came into existence will present these scenarios back to them, such that they will now make decisions. It's very sad that very little can be done in the field for children. The best one can give is encouragement for them to endure, which elders themselves are unable to provide. For there is so much confusion. One cannot ask you to report to an authority, which authority itself is in league with the whole problem. Of course, certainly once you cry out, but whom do you cry to? It's a scenario which is very difficult to envisage. Look at what happened in New Zealand. What can you do? The children who have done nothing, is that not worse than an abuse? Because they were in the mosque with their parents, therefore they deserve to die. Whom should that be reported to? That is still one scenario. Go to other countries and see how the women are abused, how they belittle them. Whom should they report to? They protest and are subdued and beaten. So if you are seeking for justice on earth, you will seek forever, until those who claim to know mature and become convinced that the mills may grind slowly, but they will grind exceedingly very fine, and the laws of creation will return to them that which they have put there in creation for others to experience.
Thank you, Gregory. Dear listeners, we've come to the end of our show tonight. I hope you enjoyed the topic tonight. It was human desires and needs. We'll be back next Tuesday, of course, as usual, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We'd love you to just go into the Grail Message. That's what we are here to do. And you can find the Grail Message on this website if you would like, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, M-E-S-S-A-G-E.com. And it's time for our next presenter, Brother Sayom. Brother Gregory, anything you would like to say goodbye, just quickly?
We wish everybody a good week.
Right, and a great week from me too, everyone. Brother Sayom's next, please. Welcome, Brother Sayom, to the show. No, it's your show. It's your show. So he'll be there in a few minutes. Dear listeners, stay there and enjoy his show too.
Thank you, Brother Sard. And yes, was feeling what was it, Brother Gregory, just now?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, what you were saying, you know. I was appreciating that. But anyway, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. All the best. Bye for now.